everybody, it's Lucky Finn Gaming here, and welcome back to Ark Survival Evolved, where today we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 animals that need buffs to become relevant again. Real quick, I'll go ahead and run through that. That's the Rex, the Dire Bear, the PT, the Rock Drake, and the Quetzal, just in case you just wanted to know right offhand which ones I was referencing. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Alright guys, and starting off our list at number 5 we have the Rex, which as you all know I talked about in my last video about whether or not Rexes are even still relevant, and we came to the basic conclusion that no, they're not. Today we have 2 animals which I believe are in direct competition for Rex. For the slot that the Rex currently fills, but I believe they actually do a better job. Those are the Spinos and the Allosaurs. The Spino, as we will see here, has 2 abilities. It has its bite ability right here, and then it has the ability to stand up on its hind legs. I'm going to go to orbital camera here and show that to you real quick. As you can see, it has the ability to stand up on its hind legs, and when it does this, it has an extremely high increased damage here. Not only that, but you may see at the top right there, right next to the stats, you may see that it has a hydration buff. That means that when it's near or in water, it does have a buff. So yeah, the Spino definitely has a much tighter grip on the roll than I think the Rex does. And then we come to the Allos. Now a lot of people think that the Allos are just kind of flyover animals, but they're really not. The Allos have a pack buff, just like the dire wolves and the Ravagers. Well, actually, tamed Ravagers don't get that pack buff. I'm not really sure why. But if you do this little roar here, then they do... Oh, wait, you know what? Never mind. They don't get a buff if you do the roar. I apologize. I always confuse that. But this one, as you can see, I'm on the pack leader here. And if you do this secondary bite, it will inflict bleed on any particular targets. Definitely good stuff there. Better for boss battles if you're looking for small-time PvP that doesn't involve gigas. I would say the Allos are definitely a better way to go. Either that or the Spino. Depending on how many tribe members you have, so on and so forth, if you're going up against somebody with Rexes. But today, guys, I'm not just going to sit here and I'm not just going to complain about these animals. I'm instead going to do something that I believe is a little different. I hear a lot of complaints about animals in Ark, and, oh, well, everything that's wrong with them. But today, I'm actually going to also talk about how I think they could improve the Tyrannosaurus. And I think one of the things that the T-Rex definitely needs is a special ability of some kind. The Allos have a pack buff. The Spino has a hydration buff. Now, the Rex might not, one of the Rex's big things is its bite, okay? That was, historically, it had a big bite, and it was one of the most dangerous things ever to see the Earth. It has tiny little arms, so you really can't do a lot with the arms like you can with the Spino. But I think that one thing that the T-Rex could definitely have it buffed is roar. I think they should definitely do something with the roar. Now, I know that the Yutyrannus already has a roaring ability, but I think it would be cool if maybe we gave the Tyrannosaurus the ability to fear humans. That's right, the actual player. I think that would be a really cool ability, and I think that would bring T-Rexes back into the niche, or back into the meta, I should say, of Ark these days. I think if they had the ability to scare players, like the actual characters, maybe even make them, make players lose control of their characters for just like a split second, or maybe fear them off of their animals. I think these would all be things that would bring it back into the niche. You could maybe even have these things to where they fear off, scare players off of gigas. I think that would bring this back into the forefront of the PvP meta. It's amazing to me that the Mammoth got a trumpet blast where it debuffs enemies. but the T-Rex does not have that, which the T-Rex would definitely be a much scarier sight than a mammoth. Like, don't get me wrong, a mammoth would still be a terrifying sight, but the T-Rex is even more so, and its roar would definitely be even more so if it had a roar, which in real life, as we know, it probably didn't. But that's beside the point. So I think definitely the T-Rex needs a buff for sure and for certain. I think its overall stats are pretty okay. Maybe it could use a little bit of a damage buff to help it keep up with the Spinos. Insane DPS. That Spino DPS with its little slashing attack is just absolutely insane. In a 1v1, it beats Rex's 10 out of 10 times. Not necessarily because it's stronger, but just because its slashing attack is just so fast compared to the Rex's bite. But yes, number 5, definitely the T-Rex, and I think a roar ability that would fear humans would be a great way to buff the Tyrannosaurus. Alright guys, and next we have the dire bear, whose role was frankly stolen by this one over here, the Megatherium. The Thylacoleo I will include in a moment, but honestly, the dire bear definitely deserves a buff. I know that it, as well as the Rex, had a TLC patch. It was part of the first one, I believe, but honestly, the TLC patch only kind of made it look a little better. You know, according to some people, I kind of like the old look a little bit better. I think they could just improve the fur and call it good. I thought it looked a little bit more adorable that way. But really, the dire bear, another animal that has definitely been shafted overall, mostly by the addition of the Megatherium. The dire bear and the Megatherium basically hold the exact same niche, but everything the dire bear can do, the Megatherium can just simply do better. Harvest berries and meat and hide, fiber. You know, the Megatherium can do it all, and the dire bear can also do it, but it just does it less. In a 1v1, the Megatherium beats the dire bear. The dire bear does have multiple attacks. It has the swipe attack and the bite attack, versus the Megatherium, which also has 2 attacks. It has its regular swipe attack and then this little bite attack here. But again, the Megatherium just kind of does everything better than the dire bear. Plus, add on that the Megatherium does have that special ability where it gets the arachnid buff, to where if it kills any insects or arachnids, then or arthropods, I guess, as it were, it does get that buff, making it useful for boss battles and even some PvP situations. But speaking of PvP situations, the Thylacoleo, really, that's what I was going to talk about with the dire bear. Versus the Thylacoleo. The Thylacoleo has the bleed effect now, but even before that, it did a little less damage than the dire bear, but it attacks, similar to the T-Rex versus the Spino, it attacks so much faster that the dire bear really just doesn't stand a chance. Again, 1v1, the Thylacoleo beats the dire bear, as well the Thylacoleo. It just has, you know, it's got speed over the dire bear, it's got the ability to jump and can even climb things. You know, just definitely an improvement over the dire bear. So it really leaves the dire bear without its own unique niche. The dire bear does have one unique ability to where it can harvest honey from beehives without taking any damage. The problem I have with that is, and while that is a cool ability, the problem I have with it is you can get the same effect with ghillie. Admittedly, it damages your ghillie when the bees go to stabbing you with their stingers, but overall, I mean, if you can get the same effect with armor that is super duper easy to build, I mean, honestly, polymer, organic polymer can also be replaced with corrupted nodules, making the ghillie suit just really easy to get. And there's really, you know, I mean, if you're looking to get honey, there's really no point in taming the dire bear. Not to mention that most honey spots are going to be out of the dire bear's range. So yeah, dire bear definitely number 4, definitely needs a buff. Unfortunately, you know I said that I didn't want to just complain. I wanted to say that I wanted to find ways to improve the animals, and honestly, I really don't know how to improve or make the dire bear any more unique. I definitely think that its stats could use a buff overall. Maybe it could use maybe a little bit faster attack speed. But overall, I really don't know how to buff this thing without, you know, just kind of having it do the same thing that the Megatherium did to the dire bear. I really don't know how to make it any more, you know, unique. Honestly, I feel like the only way that this thing could go back to being unique is if we just remove the Megatherium and maybe give the Dire Bear the insect buff. I really don't understand the deal with giving the Megatherium the insect buff in the first place, considering, again, historically speaking, I don't think Megatheriums actually ate bugs all that often. That's always been far more of a bear thing to eat, bugs and honey. But literally, these things even have the same. These things are just so comparable in every single way. I mean, they even eat the honey. Honey is like their favorite food, other than kibble, of course. So same difference there. But again, just the Megatherium is just bigger. It's got the arachnid buff, and it's got uh, and it's just got an overall, it's just got an overall base stat, buff. So overall, definitely, again, Tire Bear definitely needs a buff. I really don't know. I'm going to leave that up to the guys whose job it is to figure out how to buff the Dire Bear. But the TLC, honestly, all the TLC 1 animals kind of got shafted, in my opinion, overall. But we could talk about that in another video. But again, Dire Bear, definitely a animal that definitely needs a buff in order to make it worth taming again. Alright guys, and at the number 3 slot, you know it, I know it, it's the pteranodon. This thing has basically been left without a niche or a meta for so long. It had a very small niche, and that is oftentimes regarded as the first starting flyer that you would get on any map, with the exception of Scorched Earth, of course. Um, but even this role for the PT here has just been completely stolen by this guy right here, the tropical crystal wyvern, or any kind of crystal wyvern. I suppose you could tame another one, be a little harder, but really, there is really no point in taming PTs at this point in time when you could just go to Crystal Isles and grab yourself a crystal wyvern. Crystals are everywhere. Really, all you need to tame one of these guys is a stone pick and a few crystals, and you've got yourself a tropical crystal wyvern or any other kind of crystal wyvern, assuming you were to come across them and be able to jump on their back and feed them for the next 30 minutes or so. With a PT, you'd actually have to build a bola and then knock it out. You could probably use a club, but it's much easier to use narcotics. So let's assume you needed narcotics, especially for a higher level. You would definitely need narcotics. So you would have to get narcotics, and flying is a big meta. You have to be able to fly in this game, especially with how they've increased the heights that you need to take in order to fly. The PT here, he's just got they have crap health, crap stam. They're slower than dirt these days. They're really super slow. The crystal wyvern here is so much faster. It can carry Ankies. This thing is just a fantastic starting tame, and this thing is just basically worthless. There is no point. I mean, it's basically meat run material at this point. Nobody tames PTs anymore. Well, I'm sure there are people who do tame them, but there's really no reason to tame the PT anymore, just because it is so worthless. This thing can do. I mean, why would you have one of these when you can literally have one of these? It's an actual literal wyvern that you can tame out of hand. So now we come to the point where I say, well, how would I buff this? Well, this one's a tricky one. Again, I mean, compared to a wyvern, how is a little PT supposed to stand up? Well, overall, definitely this thing needs just needs an overall stat buff, for sure and for certain. Just from the ground up, it needs stat buffs. Another thing about the PT, though, this thing has been, like, my god, this thing has been shafted since that damn flyer update. All ARC players who've been playing for longer than a couple of years remember the freaking flyer nerf. That thing just absolutely screwed these poor guys over. It nerfed all flyer stamina, made it where you can't upgrade their speed. I think that is one place that I would start, though. I would give PTs much more speed. I would give them much better stamina. I think I would even maybe make it to where you can level up their speed again. I think that would do the PT lots of good. I think that would bring it back, at least somewhat back into the meta. to maybe make people tame them again. If they were much faster, if you even, even if you left their stam about where it is now, but made them the fastest flyers in the game, I think that would even bring them back to the forefront of the meta. You could pretty easily buff a PT's what do you call it? Um, Stamina, and then just make them super duper fast. Make them fast as frick boy, and I think they would find themselves back in the meta. That's honestly what I would do with it. I would just make them super fast. I mean, we've already got lots of fast flyers, so I would, yeah, that would be the thing that I would do with it. Just make them fast. um, make them faster than this guy, because I think this is currently the fastest flyer in the game. No, I think that honor is the snow owls as of right now. So yeah, I would make them definitely faster than snow owls. So yeah, that's what I would do with the PT. I'm going to quit railing on about it. Like I said, PT though definitely deserves a buff for sure and for certain. Alright guys, and at the number 2 slot, it's the Rock Drake, because of course it's the Rock Drake. And, I think we all know what I'm going to compare it to, so let's go ahead and get it out of the way. We're comparing the Rock Drake to the Mana Garmer here. Frankly, the Mana Garmer is just basically a better Rock Drake in every sense of the word. The Rock Drake is, like, don't get me wrong, I love the Rock Drake. The Rock Drake for a long time was one of my favorite animals. I loved it. But honestly, the Rock Drake, it needs buffs for sure. Like, why would you go all the way to Aberration? The only place where you can get the Rock Drake, go deep into the Hell Caverns that are the rad zone of Aberration, to grab an egg, bring it back, hatch it, and then have to kill a bunch of nameless, which is a pain in and of itself, just to feed this thing. When you could just go to Extinction, okay, you're looking a little goofy there, man, but whatever. When you go to Extinction and get what is basically the same thing, except it shoots ice and doesn't go invisible. The Mana Garmer has the ability to, we all know what the Mana Garmer can do. It can jump. And all this stuff. It has this little launch down ability. It's got the ability to blow ice at enemies, which can freeze them entirely. And the best part about it is it doesn't require any kind of like special egg gathering or anything like that. You just go and you knock it out, which I know that's easier said than done, but still, knocking out a Mana Garment is just so much easier than grabbing a Rock Drake egg. I mean, you'd have to spend significant time on Aberration to grab a Rock Drake egg, compared to just going to Aberration. I mean, going to, Extinction and just taming a Mana Garmer. Or even Genesis 2 now, you can just go there and grab a Mana Garmer there. The only thing that makes the Rock Drake kind of stand out is this ability here to go invisible, which of course is fairly nice, except that as you can see, it's actually not that hard to see. I don't know what it is with games and making animals and other things go quote-unquote invisible, but that don't actually go invisible. In fact, they go to invisible to a point to where it's actually fairly easy to see them still. Now I know, like, it's to keep them from being OP and everything, but I mean, come on, this thing literally has nothing else going for it. At this point, they've made Wyverns breedable, but they haven't made Rock Drakes breedable. So I mean, this thing, whatever stats you get out of it is still just like the Wyverns. Whatever you get when you pick up that egg is exactly what you're gonna get. After you imprint it, basically. I mean, obviously it's going to get a little bit of a buff once you imprint it, but overall, the Rock Drake, I think the Rock Drake just, overall, it definitely needs the ability to get bred. I think I would make its invisibility harder to see. I think that's, when I'm buffing this thing, that's definitely what I'm doing with it. I'm making it a little harder to see. And then, yeah, I think what I would do is I would just definitely buff the stats. I mean, this thing does hold kind of its own niche. You can use weapons on the back of it. This is the largest animal in the game currently that you're able to hold weapons on the back of. So it's definitely got a good niche of its own. It's not that it's been necessarily shafted out of its niche like the first 3 animals we've discussed on this list. like, even though I'm comparing it to the Managarmr, there are things you could do on the back of a Rock Drake that you cannot do on the back of a Managarmr. However, when push comes down to shove, you're still going to get absolutely pancaked when it comes to fighting other animals with a Rock Drake. And unlike the Managarmr, the Rock Drake doesn't quite have the same ability to flee. So I think I would also definitely maybe make this thing a little faster. If when I'm buffing it, I'm making this thing a little faster because it's decently fast, but it's not good enough. Like this is not outrunning a Giga. Trust me, I speak from experience. This is not outrunning a Giga. I've got lots of experience on one, so I could maybe get away from a Giga, but even still, I definitely think the Rock Drake could definitely use just overall a stat buff and give it the ability to breed, and probably widen its niche a little bit more by making its invisibility a little bit better. Overall, I wouldn't say it needs a whole lot of buff in comparison to the others on this list, but definitely still the Rock Drake needs a buff overall. Alright guys, and the number one animal that I definitely think needs a buff is this guy here, the Quetzal. This one, much like the PT, is also an animal that has been consistently shafted since the Flyer update. This thing, and as the meta has progressed, it as well has just completely lost any kind of niche. And actually, I think it's lost it to two things. That is the Argentavis and the Hover Skiff. Where I think this thing has definitely lost it to is the Argentavis here, for example. It could do everything the Quetzal could do, but again, better. That's a pretty reoccurring theme on this list here. The Argent could carry the Anki, which beforehand only the Quetzal could do, or Quetzal or Wyverns could do. But now the Argent, while it doesn't have the same weight as the Quetzal has, while it can't carry quite as much as the Quetzal, as you can see there, the Quetzal can carry just about twice as much. The PT here, I mean, not the PT, the Argentavis here cuts the weight of most resources in half. And I'm talking like most resources. I think only with a very few exceptions, and most of those things are like wood and such. Tack on the fact that you can definitely buff this thing's weight pretty well, and it can carry the Anki. There's just really no reason to tame the Quetzal anymore. The only buff that the Quetzal has over the Argent is that the Quetzal, it has the platform saddle here that you can build on the back of, but really it's really kind of pointless when at one point that was the meta to farm metal. You would just put the Anki on the back of the Quetzal, and you would farm with the Yankee. But most people have found out that it's much easier now to just take an Argentavis, drop it next to the metal, pick up the metal, pick up the Yankee with the Argent again. It's also fairly easy to go solo farming with the Argent, and I mean, as far as combat goes, the Quetzal, I mean, this thing. This thing, again, you talk about getting shafted. This thing literally flies slower than it actually would ordinarily be able to. I mean, coming from somebody who has a pilot's license, this is not fast enough to stay airborne for a being of this size, whether it's a plane or whatever. This is not fast enough to stay airborne. So that being said, this thing is just so abysmally slow. I believe this is actually well, in fact, it's not even a belief. I know this thing is the single slowest flyer in the whole game. There is no competition for how slow this thing is. If you're out farming and somebody catches you on a Wyvern or whatever, you might as well just sacrifice the Quetzal. And just watch it go away, because you're not going to outrun it. You can't even put turrets on the back of Quetzals anymore. So yeah, there's that. I mean, there is really no defense for the Quetzal. Not to mention, it's so excruciatingly hard to tame a Quetzal in the first place. Compared to an Argent, you could just set up a quick Dino Gate trap and bada bing, bada bang, you get yourself an Argent in about an hour or so. Um, but compared to the Quetzal, you'd have to have a Griffin. You'd have to chase that thing down with a Griffin, or do one of the other, 1,000-step traps that you'd have to do to tame a Quetzal. They're just there's no reason to tame the Quetzal anymore. And nowadays, of course, you have the hover skiff. Once you get up to that level, you can just fly your hover skiff wherever. It's super duper fast, even faster than the Argentavis. So, like, obviously, you'd want, once you get to that level, you'd probably want a hover skiff over an RG when it comes to farming resources and things. Um, I'd say the only difference between as far as you can build on both the Quetzal and the hover skiff, but I think it's a little harder to build on the back of the hover skiff. Like, it's a real pain in the ass. But either way, it doesn't excuse how bad the Quetzal is. So how would I buff the Quetzal? Well, without having it steal a niche from the Argentavis, it's kind of hard to say. Part of this is coming down to they've started to overlap. Our wild card has overlapped a lot of the animals' niches, so that if something outdoes another thing, I'm trying to buff these things in a way that it doesn't steal. It just doesn't simply steal the niche back, so that there's no point in taming the other animal. So one thing for the Quetzal, I would say definitely give it turrets. Give the ability to put turrets on the back of it again. I would say this is an absolute necessity for this thing. I mean, if you want to go farming with this, you would almost have to have turrets on the back of it so that it doesn't get absolutely murked by wyverns. Faster. That's a theme with these animals on this, with the flyers on this list. Faster. This thing has got to be faster. This is a joke. This is an absolute joke right here. I mean, what is this, like a whole 15 miles an hour, if that? I mean, I can run faster than this. I might as well just be picking up metal with my hands and running it back to my base. How slow this thing is. So yeah, I would definitely make this thing faster. I think, get out of here. I think the ability to build on its back is pretty cool. Like I said, I would definitely add the ability to put turrets on its back, so that way it has some form of defense. And this thing had a niche a long time ago before they took before they took out a lot of things. I know things like dodo bombing was kind of broken, but this thing at one point was basically the gunship of Ark. But one thing the unique thing I think I would add to the Quetzal, I would make it the first flyer that takes reduced bullet damage. I think that would open up this thing to have a very unique flyer niche, make this thing an air tank. Now, I know it's already got a lot of health, but unfortunately all flyers take the increased flyer damage. So I think that giving this thing the ability to tank a lot of bullets for like sky bases and things, I think that would give this thing a very unique niche. That's what I would personally do to upgrade or to buff the Quetzal. Give it heckin' more health, which it's already got quite a bit of health, as you can see. I mean, at level 1 it's got 1,000 health, which is actually really good. It's got pretty good stamina as well at 800, but I think overall, I would give it more health, and then maybe give it bullet resistance. Maybe make it to where, maybe not make it to where it's like, taking reduced damage like a trike or a stego, but maybe make it to where it's like taking equal damage to, like, say, most land animals, like the average for land animals. Make it to where it's only taking that instead of the increased number that most things like Argents and PTs and Wyverns take. So definitely I would do that and give it the ability to be a tank. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this short video. I know that there are a ton of animals that could definitely use buffs in this game, but these are just the 5 that I felt it was most urgent, who had either had their niches stolen from them entirely, or who had just been obsoleted by other animals, or by just the general meta of Ark. But I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, if you don't mind hitting that like button and hitting that subscribe button, which is just pretty close to it. And but other than that, I will see you all in another time and dimension, whenever or wherever that may be. Until then, peace out.